or later gotta cut you down.
Fame makes a promise the body cannot keep. It tells you the road will forgive you, that applause can drown out the shake in your hands, that one more drink will turn the room friendly again. Country music has always understood that bargain, because its greatest storytellers carried it in their blood. This is a roll call of voices that soared, broke, staggered, and sometimes simply slipped away while the neon still hummed. I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to hold the curtain open long enough to see how the trick works, so maybe somebody in the back row decides not to learn it the hard way. Hank Williams is where every cautionary tale seems to start. He was 29 and already living like a ghost driver, shuttled from gig to gig while his spine and his heart shouted for mercy he wouldn't grant. The last ride came on New Year's morning, a Cadillac rolling through winter with a star asleep in the back seat. Alcohol had him in a soft choke, and the medicines meant to quiet his pain turned the snow blue. The world woke to headlines and a silence that still isn't finished. People call him a legend. I call him a flashing red light that too many ignored because the songs were perfect and the tux looked sharp. Johnny Horton warned about drunk drivers from the stage and still met one on the highway. He was careful, famously wary, proof that virtue doesn't grant you right of way when the other lane has lost its brakes. One wrong vehicle crossed the night and unthreaded a life that had been stitched neat and tight. His friends said he'd been talking about fate. Fate answered in the blunt language of steel. If you ever needed a reminder that another person's bottle can spill into your lane, his story is it. The song ends, the applause fades, and caution is all that remains. Graham Parsons turned California sunsets into hymns and fell in love with dangerous chemistry. He mixed what shouldn't be mixed, convinced the morning would show up like it always had. It did, only this time, alarmed people were knocking on a motel door in Joshua Tree and realizing the party had become a vigil. What followed is legend. Friends who thought they were keeping a promise took his body into the desert and tried to turn starlight into goodbye. Strip the folklore away and you still have a simple truth. If you give the night enough chances, it will take one. Keith Whitley sang as if every verse cost blood. He had charm, jokes, and a way of making sorrow look like a dance you might survive. The bottle made promises he wanted to believe. Mornings repeat until one of them doesn't, and the day he missed arrived like a thief who knew the floor plan. People quote the number that measured his last glass, as if math can explain grief. It never will. What explains tragedy is the human habit of choosing short relief over long pain, and the way those choices stack up quietly until the roof sags. Gary Stewart wrote like a barroom philosopher who could hear the bones creak beneath bravado. When his wife died, something crucial inside him tilted. Friends tried to circle wagons. The nights grew longer, the mornings crueler. He chose an exit his loved ones struggled to describe aloud, and that is how we will keep it here. There are decisions you name and decisions you hum around. What I will say is that heartbreak can drink a man dry even when he quits pouring. If you need to understand him, play the records at closing time and don't skip the last verse. Johnny Paycheck turned working man rage into an anthem that still gets yelled in parking lots across America. He also turned self-sabotage into a touring schedule. Nights blurred. Trouble arrived like a loyal fan. A barroom incident put him behind bars and the oxygen left his career the way air leaves a tire with a hidden nail. He fought back, sang, toured, apologized, and then did it all again because momentum can feel like hope. The body kept the real ledger. Years later, breath became a negotiation he couldn't always win. The man who told the boss off ran out of minutes to spend. Waylon Jennings is the patron saint of hard lessons learned late. Coke carved ruts in his health, whiskey filled them, and the touring grind packed the soil tight. He clawed his way to sobriety with outlaw grit, but the past collects with interest. Diabetes moved in like a quiet landlord and started measuring rooms. He kept the humor, kept the authority, kept the warning a little boys' club bravado still needs to hear. Cool, will not cover your copay. When I watch late interviews, I see a man who turned swagger into wisdom and paid cash for the exchange. George Jones taught us how a vowel can cry. He also taught us that talent doesn't cancel consequences. He skipped shows, dodged promises, and became a myth inside a punchline. Fans forgave him because the sound he carried was cathedral grade. He earned years back through grit and help, but a body can only absorb so many apologies. The official cause was medical. The unofficial cause was the long war he fought with a 2-inch enemy in a glass. When his records play after midnight, you can hear the ambulance siren between the chorus and the fade. Jerry Lee Lewis seemed unkillable, the human shrug at every headline. He outlived rumors, feuds, and most of the people who bet against him. Do not mistake endurance for immunity. He left a trail of scorched earth that never cooled, and the fuel for those fires came in bottles and memories that taste worse the second time around. He made it to a number that surprises people who keep score. The truth is simpler. Some engines run hot for a long time, but that doesn't mean the passengers enjoyed the ride. Tammy Wynette wore rhinestones like armor and sang Private Pain like scripture. Doctors, prescriptions, rumors, reconciliations, her life read like a medicine cabinet inventory annotated in lipstick. Later reports tried to tidy up the story. Fans never let them. They remember the tremor in her voice, the endurance behind her posture, the way she could make forgiveness sound possible for people who had long since given up on it. If you want to understand the cost, look at the calendar of appointments and the bright smile that kept showing up on time anyway. Vern Gosdin earned the nickname The Voice by sounding like Sunday morning wrapped in Saturday night perfume. His decline felt slower, a long dimming rather than a single blow, but the honky-tonk habits traveled with him like luggage no one offered to carry. When a singer like that goes quiet, listeners suddenly understand how much they relied on him to narrate their own troubles. The jukebox gets a little meaner. The kitchen radio seems to pick different weather. Hank Cochran didn't just write hits, he wrote blueprints for how a heart works under stress. The man lived in the hours where writers collect details the rest of us forget. Bars, back rooms, long afternoons that disappear between handshake and last call, he knew them all. Cancer finally asked for his chair, but by then the body had been paying smaller taxes for decades. There's a romance to the image of the happy-go-lucky songwriter. The ledger is less romantic and far more specific, and everybody keeps a copy whether they admit it or not. Roger Miller's wit leapt fences. He could turn nonsense into gospel, then grin while the audience chased after the meaning. He also carried the classic performer's starter kit: cigarettes, late nights, cups that refill themselves when you're not looking. Throats and lungs do not negotiate. They tally. One day the tally gets read aloud, and it sounds like a verdict delivered by a weary judge. His records still sparkle like a joke told better than it needs to be. The silence after them is the price of admission. Eddie Rabbitt made hooks that felt like open roads and clean shirts. He was famous for warmth, not chaos, but the culture around him was a haze of late hours and friendly poison. Lung cancer is not a dramatic headline, it's a series of appointments, a stack of pamphlets, a chair where the strongest person in the room sits down because standing up takes too much air. When he left, a particular kind of radio sunshine went with him, and morning drives got a little grayer for a while. Tommy Collins was the cautionary tale that kept refusing to end. Gifted, generous, lost, rescued, repeat. Friends hauled him out of holes more than once, and gratitude sang harmony with regret in his later years. Emphysema is a slow thief that steals chairs, then stares, then afternoons. It does not care whether you meant to quit earlier, it only cares how much smoke and strain your lungs carried for how long. He paid in breath for parties most people had forgotten by then. Jack Green presented class even when life stopped returning the favor. People mark his ending by saying Alzheimer's, and they're not wrong. But decades earlier, there were choices and seasons that carved their initials into the rest of the story. A career can look solid as oak from the crowd and still wobble backstage. He kept singing anyway, kept greeting folks with a smile that made them feel seen. That kindness is what sticks, not the diagnoses. Justintown's Earl felt like the bright younger cousin of every hard-lived legend before him. He spoke frankly about recovery and relapse, about trying, failing, and trying again. The new danger is the mix. A person can think they know what they're holding and still be wrong by one fatal grain. He was found too soon, and the news snapped across phones like a bad weather alert. Grief for him feels particularly modern, fast, public, and threaded with anger at a supply chain that treats lives like inventory. David Allan Coe is still with us, though the bill for decades of mayhem shows up in every health update. It is difficult to explain to younger fans how a man can be both indestructible and fragile at the same time. The answer is that nobody is indestructible and everyone is fragile. He played the long game against sleep, nutrition, and moderation, and those games do not end in trophy ceremonies. What I want for him now is simple: quiet mornings that smell like coffee and not like last night. Billy Walker did not build a character out of chaos. He built one out of steadiness, the reliable handshake, the patient voice that signs an autograph for the 20th fan without checking the clock. The crash that took him, his wife, and friends felt unfair because he had already paid the small taxes of self-control so many times. Fate does not grade on a curve. It shows up once, and you either have the luck or you do not. The Opry stage seemed to list when his absence settled in. Farron Young adored the spotlight and flirted with despair when it wandered. He was stylish, sharp, and sometimes mean to himself in ways nobody else could see. When the bookings thinned and the mirror turned unkind, he made a final irreversible choice that we will not name directly here. Friends still spin stories that keep him laughing, because that is how they prefer to keep him. If you want a clean moral, you will not find one. You will find a talented man ambushed by a mood that lied convincingly. Steve Gaines lived in the country rock borderland where twang and thunder shook hands. He joined a band whose legend would be written in fire and wreckage. When the plane went down, the fuel was gone and the prayers were short, and the sky became a hard teacher. People argue genres. Gravity does not. His guitar lines still sound like a window opening, and that might be how we remember him best. The moment right before the air changes. Thread all these lives together and a pattern emerges that is not subtle. Alcohol is the common villain, sometimes direct, sometimes just a patient accomplice. It shows up as a party favor, a networking tool, a medicine for the midnight thoughts, a lap blanket for people who go cold when the bus pulls away. It pairs with pills, with powders like Coke, with fatigue, with fame, with the lie that you can run a body like a tour bus and not lose a wheel. The press releases try for tidy endings. The truth is messy and often whispered under the music. I don't want to end with a wagging finger. I want to end with a hand on a shoulder. If you are out there chasing a dream that drags you through late nights, remember the quiet math of survival. Trade velocity for longevity when you can. Let friends drive. Call the person who tells you the truth instead of the one who tells you what you want. If your story has begun to rhyme with any of the names we've walked past tonight, change the rhyme scheme while you still can. Fame, for those who find it, is a magic trick. The only way to beat a trick is to know how it's done and decide not to be impressed. There is another layer nobody photographs well, the small negotiations that become a life. A singer agrees to a nightcap to be polite, then a novelty shot the club owner calls tradition. A writer takes a pill to get 4 hours, then another to wake up for morning radio, then a third to steady the hands before sound check. The show goes fine, truly because professionals make shows go fine, and the quiet voice that warned you not to stack those choices fades under the cheer. Weeks turn to seasons. You promise yourself a break after this run, after this single, after this award that may or may not come. In the mirror you see a winner or a liar depending on the hour. By the time the headlines arrive, the people closest to the hurt have already read the forecast. Jack Green's friends saw the wobble before others noticed the fall. Tommy Collins's rescuers learned the back roads to every clinic in reachable distance. Keith Whitley's circle loved him loudly and still could not outshout the whisper that a drink would make the day easier. Justin Towns Earl tried to design a future that would not collapse when a single night went sideways, and the market betrayed him with a mixture nobody ordered. David Allan Coe's body files the paperwork for decades of burned candles. Waylon Jennings kept saying the most unfashionable sentence in music, "Take care of yourself first." George Jones kept proving an unfashionable truth. You can climb out of a hole and still find dirt under your nails years later. Tammy Wynette kept moving because that is what mothers and legends do when the world demands grace on a deadline. They were working people clocking hours that would break most of us. If there is a through line, it is not weakness. It is the way relief pretends to be rescue until rescue finally arrives too late. There is a last lesson tucked inside the liner notes. Nobody aims to become a cautionary verse. It happens one decision at a time, disguised as hospitality, disguised as relief, disguised as a good story for the bus tomorrow. The manager wants to celebrate, the promoter wants to toast, the label rep wants to talk numbers somewhere quiet, and each invitation is paved with intentions and timing. You tell yourself you earned it. You tell yourself you can quit when the tour wraps. You tell yourself the room is easier to face when the corners blur and the laughter shows up early. And sometimes it is, until the bill arrives dressed like a headline. That is the rhythm in too many of these lives, a season of wins, a little extra gas in the night, and then a curve you never saw coming because the dashboard lights felt like stars. The unglamorous alternative almost never gets photographed, yet it's the one that keeps people breathing. Sleep like it's part of the gig, eat before the show, carry water and a stubborn friend. Put your keys in someone else's pocket when the room goes loud. Learn which medicines cannot share a table with alcohol. Ask the road crew how they've stayed upright this long and then copy their boring excellence. Choose exits that lead home instead of back rooms with no clocks. Train one person to say no on your behalf and respect the word even when your mood insists on yes. Most of all, remember that art doesn't need harm to be honest. It needs mornings you can trust, lungs that still pull the chorus in, and hands that can find the chords without a tremor. Boring routines beat glittering emergencies every single time. For the rest of us, fans, families, the people who hum in checkout lines, our job is simpler. Don't romanticize the spiral. Don't demand the dangerous story. Applaud the artist who leaves the after-party early. Buy the sober record and talk about the songs, not the old chaos. If a friend begins to sound like a headline in waiting, change their scenery. Drive. Distract. Sit up with them. Protect each other at the speed of kindness, not gossip. These songs are sturdy, they survive honesty. Play them louder, not to drown the memories, but to honor the voices that bought lessons twice, so maybe we don't have to. If you're on a dark road tonight, pull over, breathe, and call home. There is still time to change the ending, and country music will keep the seat warm until you do.